My appa, which means dad in Korean, would tell me that Koreans and Japanese people have a closer connection than most people think. According to what he was taught, and in turn taught me, was that Japanese people are actually distant relatives to Korean people, even in the modern day. Despite some rather unfortunate incidents that usually ended with severe conflict between the two countries that still continue to this day, there are still some who believe that they are still connected and shouldn't be considered enemies as a result. In fact, Emperor Akihito, who ruled over Japan during the Heisei period, which was around January 8, 1989 to April 30, 2019, even stated during the 2002 FIFA World Cup that, quote, I, on my part, feel a certain kinship with Korea, given the fact that it is recorded in the Chronicles of Japan that the mother of Emperor Kamu Nikasa was of the line of King Muryong of Paekje, end quote. Now, this may not mean much to those uninterested in the ancient history of both Korea and Japan, but to me it is very much interesting as I am of Korean descent and wish to find out more about the ancient history of my heritage as well as the heritage of other countries, societies, and civilizations if possible. Now, what he meant by that is Emperor Kamu, who was the 50th emperor of Japan, was said to have been descended from King Muryang, who himself was of Korean descent from the kingdom of Paekje, back when Korea used to be divided into three kingdoms, rather than simply being called North and South Korea. No thanks to Kim Il Sung. Yeah, thanks for nothing, Kim Il Sung. Anyway, King Muryong was also given the name Semakishi or King Shima due to having been born on the island of Kyushu, which is one of Japan's major islands. According to the Chronicles of Japan, or the Nihon Shoki as it's called in Japanese, which is basically the origin story of Japan's history and people itself, there was once a clan called the Yamato clan who were descended from King Muryong through his sons Prince Junda and Prince Hong. Prince Hong himself would end up becoming king of Paekje after Muryong, with his own son, Prince Imsong, having decided to settle in Japan. As for how Emperor Kamu of the Yamato clan ended up being descended from King Muryong, his mother Takono no Asomi Nikasa, who served as a concubine to his predecessor Emperor Konnin, was herself descended from Yamato no Ototsuku, who, if the last name didn't tip you off, was said to have been one of the many members of the Yamato clan, who in turn were related to Prince Junda. As for why Prince Junda was sent to Japan in the first place, it was apparently due to a hostage situation involving Paekje not sending the tributes to the imperial Japanese court. As a way to repair relations with the Japanese courts, Prince Junda ended up being sent there in a manner that almost reminds me of Theseus and how he was sent to Crete to pay tribute in honor of Athens. In the Nihon Shoki, it is recorded as, quote, summer fourth month. The king of Paekje dispatched Magun with tribute. In a separate note, the king said previously, to submit tribute, I dispatched Manakwa, who is of no relation to the royalty of Paekje. Therefore, I humbly send Ta or Junda that he may serve in the court. End quote. He eventually had a son who was a monk named Kun and was considered the ancestor of the Yamato no Kimi or the Yamato clan. Junda would eventually have a son with an unnamed Japanese woman who went by the name Hoshino Kimi, with their son, who was named Kun, as mentioned. And though he himself became a monk, Junda's legacy would eventually grow into the clan known as the Yamato, whose influence continues to thrive even in modern day Japan. Though I understand that tensions between Japan and Korea are still pretty high thanks to some rather unsavory acts that the Japanese military and government have done to Korea for years, with Japan's imperial family unfortunately using their ancestral connection to Korea as an excuse to forcibly assimilate Korean people into Japan. I personally believe that we should try to make peace with our lineage and ancestry, even if it comes into conflict with others who may not appreciate it. But please understand though, I myself am Korean and will stand by it no matter how much I love Japanese culture, as even I am appalled by Japan's constant cruelty and ruthless colonization attempts on Korea and do not condone it at all. Regardless, I try to be as neutral and objective when it comes to history, as I understand that not everything is going to be as black and white like most people would want it to be. And as Blue from Overly Sarcastic Productions once said, we should celebrate the nice and criticize the yikes because neither exists in a vacuum. However, because I am still proud of my heritage as a Korean Canadian girl, I will still disapprove of any abhorrent behavior that anyone, regardless of race or ethnicity, commits because I still have standards. Fun fact, I actually learned about this thanks to Gaijin Goomba of all people, as like I mentioned in one of my previous videos revolving around him, I like to watch his videos for both entertainment and educational purposes. One of his recent videos involving the Mega Man character Yamato Man actually talks about a bit more about the connection between Korea and Japan through the Yamato clan, as Yamato Man subtly references it through his name and inspiration. Oh, and did you know that Pokemon's legendary Lugia has a connection to both Japan and Korea as well? Though in this case, Lugia is loosely based on the sea god Ryujin or Owatatsumi, as he's sometimes referred to in some traditions, who supposedly helped Empress Jingu invade the Korean peninsula with his help by using the tide jewels that could help control the waves and tides of the sea. She supposedly used them to strand both strand and drown the Korean navy that fought against her forces, though some legends, however, claim that the Empress actually stole the jewels from Ryujin by having the god Azumi no Isora take them from Ryujin when he wasn't looking, though I understand this may not be the best representation of Japan due to their historical and even mythical conflicts with Korea since ancient times, but I thought it'd be interesting to combine both cultural and historical aspects with pop culture if I can. Other than that, let's look into something else more positive and less likely to start controversy. First, we start with the taiko drum. As Gaijin Goomba mentioned and showed in some of his previous videos, he's an avid fan of taiko and even practiced it from time to time. The taiko drum itself is a Japanese staple, but like many other cultural tidbits and items that prominently get featured in Japanese media and culture, the drum is actually not from Japan, rather was borrowed and adopted into it by other Asian cultures. It is said that the taiko drum actually came from Korea and bikes in China, or whatever China was called back then. According to historical accounts, a group of Japanese men visited Korea in 588 CE to study a drum known as the kako. The kako itself came from South China but was known as the jegu, which originated from the Tang dynasty. For the Korean counterpart, their version was called the kalgo, or the yangjanggo, or the yango for short. The Kalgo was said to have been extremely popular during the era of King Yongjo during the Joseon dynasty, but eventually fell out of practice over the years after his reign ended. Fortunately, you can still witness it being performed by the traditional band of the Republic Army of Korea. Last but not least, we have what is considered one of Japan's most prominent treasures that we need to discuss: the seven-branched sword. It is often depicted in many forms of Japanese media, such as Fire Emblem, Bleach, Okami, Final Fantasy, and etc. But what most of you may not know is that this particular sword actually came from Korea, or more specifically, Pekche. It is said that one of the kings of Pekche, whose name is unknown, gifted this sword to one of the Yamato clan rulers as a ceremonial sword, meaning that it wasn't meant to be used as a weapon per se. It even got mentioned within the Nihon Shoki during the reign of Empress Jingu, the same woman who tried to invade Korea by using the powers of a sea god. Yes, that Empress Jingu. The sword itself still exists and is currently residing in the Isonokami shrine in the Nara prefecture, where it is used to help better understand the relationship between Korea and Japan. One can't help but wonder if this sword symbolizes the possibility of Japan and Korea being able to unite with each other without the constant need for conflict and domination on either side.